Welcome to session 7.3. In this session, we focus on the retail sector methodology. The objective is to understand how the Act framework was applied to this sector context. We'll go through 1. The context and key challenges identified for decarbonisation in the retail sector. 2. The key indicator packages and their relative importance. 3. The basic data that needs to be collected to make it all possible. And 4. Learning points from the application of the methodology in the pilot phase. The decarbonisation challenges in the retail sector are very different from those faced by electricity generators or auto manufacturers. Retail is the interface between producers and final consumers for thousands, if not millions, of products. Retail emissions are thus mostly indirect in nature and spread across a variety of sources and sectors, namely emissions associated with the manufacture of products, emissions associated with transport for distribution of products, as well as for customer travel, retailers' own emissions from buildings, typically from either heating or refrigeration equipment, plus indirect emissions associated with electricity consumption, and emissions from production of food products, namely energy consumption, methane emissions from livestock and food production, or emissions associated with deforestation and land use change. So, for retailers, there are a large number of factors that need to be considered. Their role in the low-carbon transition is strongly linked to both performance of their supply chains and the efficiency of their distribution network. The multitude of products that can be sold, as well as the multitude of different retailing practices, makes it a challenge to assess transition and performance of the sector quantitatively. In addition, retailers play an important role in influencing their customers' choices. They have a choice of what to sell or not, what to display, and how to display it, as well as using other forms of marketing to clients. Because of its intermediary role and complexity, the large majority of indicators in the retail sector Act methodology are qualitative. It should be no surprise that the most significant indicator modules for retail are related to the performance of the products sold. It accounts for nearly 40% of the final performance rating. This indicator considers production, use, and end of life of products. The objective is to assess to what extent the retailer has practices that allow it to manage and reduce the carbon footprint of its products. Given the focus on product performance and engagement with suppliers and customers, strong management practices have to be in place, which is why management is the second most heavily weighted indicator module at 12%. This is followed by modules supplier engagement, customer engagement, emissions reduction targets, and business model, all with a weight of 10%. Material investments have a weight of 5%. This corresponds mainly to the management of the company's own greenhouse gas footprint, related to management of directly owned buildings and fleet. Intangible investments are in this case considered not relevant. However, some research and development activities, such as eco-design and life cycle assessment, are considered under the product performance module. The main areas for data gathering are targets in terms of renewable energy consumption, emissions from logistics fleet, and reducing refrigerant leaks, management plans, such as identification plan for major sources of emissions from the range of products sold, waste management, supplier engagement plans, including actions to reduce GHG emissions, customer engagement plans, with details of the overall strategy, its goals, and deployment. Only the upstream part of the Scope 3 emissions reduction target is compared to an upstream emissions benchmark. The upstream part of the value chain is where the majority of GHG emissions are found in the retail sector. A list of concrete actions that companies can take describing how they can influence emissions reductions within their value chain, upstream and downstream, was created. These actions are reported on by product categories and evaluated in terms of their GHG impact. If this evaluation of GHG impact, known as carbon hotspotting, has not already been completed by the retailer, a predefined list of impact areas can be referred to. We'll now go into some detail on key performance indicators, how they're calculated, and how they are used to produce a performance score for the retail sector. Here's the full list of indicators for the retail sector. We will focus on one indicator, RT 4.1, product-specific interventions. To be ready for the transition to a low-carbon economy, retail companies need to plan and carry out interventions within their value chain in order to exercise their market position and influence to reduce GHG emissions. The company should start by knowing their main GHG hotspots. This is the relative impact of each of their products. For each product category, the company project team identifies interventions that correspond to the most ambitious impacts achievable by a retailer. The interventions reported by the company are compared with a reference list of interventions and other interventions reported by other companies. A relative benchmark is established, whereby the analyst assigns a maturity score to the reported interventions. Several measures are combined to assign a score to the intervention. These measures are the maturity of the intervention, its carbon mitigation potential, the extent or size of the intervention, whether the intervention targets the most relevant phase of the life cycle in terms of emissions impact. Products covering at least 70% of the climate impact of the company should be included in the reporting and scoring. What do we mean by interventions? Well, examples of interventions to manage the upstream part of impacts include 1. Supplier engagement with use of procurement decisions or standards. 2. Certification and chain of custody schemes. 3. Engaging in product eco-design. 4. Managing downstream impacts through consumer education. 5. Choice architecture oriented towards sustainable options or pricing choices can be an effective way of nudging consumer choice. Companies can also adopt overarching interventions, such as cross-industry collaboration or measures to tackle waste. Each intervention is located on a maturity matrix, characterising it in terms of impact or ambition. For example, to address the electric efficiency of sold appliances, a retailer might choose to procure only products with certified energy efficiency labels. But it could go further and only sell products meeting a minimum efficiency requirement, hopefully a stringent one. Equally, a retailer could decide it will only sell products that meet its energy efficiency requirements in line with the 2 degrees benchmark. Through the use of these methods, indicator RT 4.1 product-specific interventions can be quantified and a comparison established between different retailers. This is a relatively complex task requiring many data points and analysis steps. As with other sectors, this bar chart shows you the relevant modules for retailers, the indicators that compose them, and their relative weight. The width of the bar represents its weight in the overall performance score. The coloured area provides the basis for the final performance score, a weighted average, which expresses a number from 0 to 20.